second floor, locked door, and still, he was here. You will pay for this.
My 8-year-old daughter phoned me at 3 a.m. saying someone was watching her sleep. What I discovered under her bed started a nightmare that nearly destroyed my family. I'm Nathan Cooper, 37 years old, formerly with Army Special Forces for 9 years before I established my own security consulting business. My wife, Angela, works as a trauma nurse at the county hospital, and our daughter, Sophie, just celebrated her 8th birthday last month. We live in a comfortable suburban neighborhood outside Seattle, the kind of place where people leave their garage doors open and kids ride bikes until dark. That Tuesday night shattered our sense of safety forever. My phone lit up at exactly 3:14 in the morning. The screen showed Sophie's name, which immediately sent alarm bells through my mind because she'd never called me from her room before. I answered before the second ring. "Daddy." Her voice came through tiny and shaking, barely above a whisper. "The man in my room is here again. He's standing by my closet and he's smiling at me." My blood turned ice cold in my veins. I was already throwing off the covers, my hand instinctively reaching for the biometric safe on my nightstand where I kept my service weapon. Angela stirred beside me, instantly alert from years of working emergency room shifts, where seconds determined whether people lived or died. "I'm coming right now, sweetheart. Stay on the phone with me," I told Sophie, keeping my voice calm and steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. "Don't look at him. Keep your eyes on your bedroom door and wait for me." I moved down the hallway barefoot, weapon in hand, while Angela followed close behind, carrying the aluminum baseball bat we kept in the linen closet. My mind was racing through impossible scenarios. I'd personally designed and installed our home security system using military-grade components. Motion sensors covered every approach to the house, cameras monitored all entry points, and the doors had reinforced frames with pick-resistant locks. Nothing had triggered any alarm. No notification had appeared on my phone. Yet my daughter was terrified of someone in her room, and this wasn't the first time she'd mentioned seeing the man. I reached Sophie's bedroom door and turned the handle slowly, pushing it open while staying to the side of the frame. The nightlight cast long shadows across walls decorated with her drawings of butterflies and flowers. Sophie sat upright in her bed, her blanket clutched to her chest, pointing toward the closet with a trembling finger. "He went in there when he heard you coming," she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. I signaled Angela to stay back while I approached the closet, every nerve on high alert. I yanked the door open fast, weapon ready, clearing the space methodically. Nothing but hanging clothes, shoeboxes, and stuffed animals piled on the upper shelf. I checked behind every item, under every stack, in every corner. The closet was empty. "There's nobody here, baby girl," I said, holstering my weapon and sitting on the edge of Sophie's bed. But something felt profoundly wrong. Sophie wasn't prone to nightmares or making up stories. She was a practical, grounded kid. And this was the 4th time in 3 weeks she'd mentioned seeing a man in her room. As I pulled Sophie into a reassuring hug, I heard it. A soft scratching sound from beneath the bed. Angela heard it too, her body tensing, her knuckles white on the baseball bat. I held up one finger for silence and slowly leaned down to look under Sophie's bed. What I saw made my heart stop. Fresh, muddy footprints on the hardwood floor, leading from the window straight to the closet. But that was impossible. Sophie's bedroom was on the 2nd floor, at least 15 feet off the ground with no trellis, no ladder access. Nothing that would make climbing up there easy or obvious. My mind shifted immediately into tactical assessment mode. Someone had been inside my daughter's bedroom, someone with the skills to climb to a 2nd-story window, and the technical knowledge to bypass a sophisticated security system. Someone who had been watching my family closely enough to know our routines and vulnerabilities. This wasn't some random burglar or neighborhood creep. This was targeted, professional, and deeply disturbing. The scratching sound came again, and I realized what it actually was. Tree branches scraping against the exterior wall in the wind. But those footprints were undeniably real, and the mud was still slightly damp. "Angela, take Sophie to our room right now and lock the door," I said quietly, my voice carrying an edge that made Angela move immediately without questions. "Call 911 and tell them we have an active intruder situation. Then call your parents and tell them you're coming to stay with them tonight." As my family hurried out, I examined the window more carefully. The lock was intact and appeared functional, but when I looked closer at the sill, I spotted tiny metal shavings scattered along the frame. Someone had picked this lock with precision tools. This was professional work. the kind of entry technique taught to intelligence operatives and special forces soldiers. This wasn't some amateur breaking in to steal electronics. I grabbed my phone and started photographing everything. The footprints, the metal shavings, the window lock, every detail documented before the police arrived. Old training habits running on autopilot. Detective Maria Sanchez showed up 23 minutes later with 2 patrol officers, but I'd already secured the entire scene and completed my preliminary investigation. Detective Sanchez was sharp, probably mid-30s, with observant eyes that cataloged every detail as she walked through the room. "Mr. Cooper, I understand you have extensive military and security experience," she said, reviewing my documentation. "Walk me through your assessment of what happened here." I respected her professional approach. Single point of entry, second-floor window. Professional lock-picking technique with minimal disturbance. The intruder knew exactly where to go and how to avoid detection. This wasn't random. Someone's been conducting surveillance on my daughter specifically. Angela sat on the living room couch with Sophie wrapped in a blanket, finally starting to calm down. "She's mentioned the man in her room 4 times over the past 3 weeks," Angela added, her nursing instincts keeping her voice steady for Sophie's sake. "We thought they were bad dreams or an overactive imagination. We never considered someone was actually coming into our house." Detective Sanchez took extensive notes, her expression growing more serious. "Any recent changes in your professional life? New cases that might have made enemies, workplace conflicts or threats? Anything that could explain why someone would target your family for surveillance?" I considered this carefully. My security consulting firm, Cooper Strategic Services, worked with high-profile clients who faced genuine threats. Politicians needing discreet protection, corporate executives dealing with stalkers, celebrities with obsessive fans. I'd made enemies over the years, but most were either incarcerated or wouldn't risk escalating to this level. "I've made enemies," I admitted, "but most are either behind bars or would understand that coming after my family crosses a line that guarantees severe consequences." After the police completed their investigation and left, I spent the rest of the night reviewing security footage on my laptop. My system was sophisticated. Using enterprise-level equipment, I'd configured myself with redundant recording and encrypted storage. But as I scrubbed through the timeline, I discovered something that made my stomach turn. Someone had created a perfect loop of the exterior camera feeds for exactly 16 minutes, the precise window during which Sophie's room was accessed. "This is someone with serious technical capabilities," I told Angela, as Sophie finally slept between us in our bed, exhausted from fear and adrenaline. "They understand surveillance systems. They know our daily routines, and they specifically targeted Sophie. This isn't opportunistic. This is planned and deliberate." Angela, who'd seen enough trauma and evil during her years in emergency medicine to understand the implications, asked the question I'd been dreading. "What do we do?" My jaw tightened with determination. First priority is making Sophie safe. Tomorrow I'm upgrading our security to levels most government facilities don't have. Second, I'm calling in every favor I'm owed. Someone wants to play psychological games with my family. They're about to discover why that's a fatal miscalculation. The next morning, while Angela drove Sophie to her parents' house 3 hours away in Portland, I made calls to my former unit. Within 6 hours, I had 4 ex-Special Forces soldiers at my house installing military-grade security equipment that most civilians didn't even know existed. Motion sensors sensitive enough to detect a rabbit at 75 yards, infrared cameras with advanced night vision, pressure sensors underneath every window frame, acoustic detectors that could pick up breathing patterns through walls. My phone rang as they finished the installation. Unknown number with no caller ID. I answered. "Hello, Nathan?" came a smooth, educated voice that carried a hint of amusement. "Very impressive response time. Your daughter has such beautiful dreams. I particularly enjoyed watching her sleep last night. She looks so peaceful when she's afraid." My blood boiled with rage, but I kept my voice absolutely steady. "Who is this?" "Someone who's been waiting a very long time to meet you properly, Nathan. You took something irreplaceable from me. Now I'm going to take something irreplaceable from you. Consider this your formal introduction. The game has only just begun, and I promise you'll lose everything before it ends." The line disconnected. I stared at my phone, my mind immediately racing through every case, every enemy, every person who might want revenge badly enough to target my family. The voice was unfamiliar, but the level of sophisticated planning and resources suggested someone with serious backing and motivation. My business partner, Derek Chen, former NSA cryptographer who specialized in digital forensics, called me back within an hour after analyzing the security breach. This is extremely high-end work, Nathan. Whoever compromised your cameras has military or intelligence agency training. They used a sophisticated repeater device to create that loop, but they made one small mistake. What mistake? I asked. Their equipment has a unique electronic signature. I can trace the manufacturer. Give me a few hours. While Derek worked his technical magic, I drove out to visit my old commanding officer, Colonel Raymond Martinez, who'd retired 5 years ago and now ran a private military training facility in the mountains outside Seattle. Colonel Martinez had connections throughout the intelligence community and owed me several significant favors from our deployment days. "Someone's conducting a long-game psychological warfare campaign against you, son," Martinez said after I briefed him on the situation. "This level of surveillance, technical sophistication, and patient planning suggests someone with professional training and substantial resources. You have any ideas who might have it out for you this badly?" I'd been wrestling with that question all morning. "I keep coming back to the Thornton case from 3 years ago," I finally said. Martinez's expression darkened with recognition. Christopher Walsh, heir to the Thornton industrial fortune, had hired me to provide security during a high-stakes kidnapping situation. Walsh's younger brother Michael had been taken by a criminal organization, and I'd led the extraction operation. But despite our best efforts and flawless execution, something had gone catastrophically wrong. Michael Walsh had been eliminated by his captors during the final moments of the rescue, executed right before we breached their position. The subsequent investigation had completely cleared me and my team. Michael's end was caused by the kidnappers panicking when they realized rescue was imminent, not by any tactical failure on our part. But Christopher Walsh had blamed me anyway. He'd accused me publicly of caring more about my consulting fee than his brother's safety, claiming I'd prioritized my own team's security over Michael's life. The accusations were completely unfounded, but grief and guilt had twisted Christopher's perspective beyond reason. Rich heir with unlimited resources, a grudge he's been nursing for 3 years, and the kind of twisted psychology that would make him target an innocent child, Martinez mused. That could definitely explain this sophisticated approach. What's Walsh been doing since his brother's passing? I pulled out my phone and started researching while we talked. Christopher Walsh had inherited the Thornton industrial empire after Michael's end, a conglomerate worth approximately $3 billion spanning manufacturing, technology, and defense contracting. Since taking control, he'd become increasingly reclusive and obsessed. His social media presence had grown darker, filled with cryptic posts about justice, revenge, and making people pay for their failures and betrayals. The pieces were falling into place. Christopher Walsh had the financial resources, the motivation, and the increasingly unstable psychology to orchestrate exactly this kind of campaign against my family. Derek called with an update that confirmed my suspicions. Found the electronic signature on that repeater device. It was manufactured by Thornton Technologies, specifically their military contracting division. Only about 40 units were ever produced, all for special operations and intelligence applications. Whoever used that device either works for Thornton or has direct access to their restricted military inventory. I felt the familiar calm settling over me, the mental state that always preceded decisive action. Christopher Walsh wanted to wage psychological warfare against my family. I'd spent years learning how to break men who thought they were untouchable. It was time to demonstrate exactly what happened when someone threatened the people I loved. That night, I sat in my study, developing a comprehensive counter-strategy. Christopher Walsh thought he was the hunter, stalking my family from the shadows. But I'd hunted the worst humanity had to offer in the mountains of Middle East, the jungles of South America, and urban combat zones across 3 continents. Now it was time to show Christopher Walsh what happened when the prey became the hunter. As midnight approached, my secure phone buzzed with a text message from another unknown number. "Your daughter's school playground has remarkably poor security. Tomorrow morning should prove very interesting." My jaw clenched tight. Christopher Walsh had just made his final mistake. The gloves were coming off, and I was about to show him exactly why threatening my family guaranteed his complete destruction. I called Angela immediately. "Get Sophie out of school tomorrow. Actually, get her completely out of Washington State. Remember your cousin Rebecca in San Diego? Take Sophie there today. Right now." "What's happening?" Angela's voice carried controlled worry, the same tone she used when dealing with critical trauma patients. Walsh just threatened Sophie's school directly. I need both of you somewhere safe while I handle this situation permanently. Angela didn't waste time arguing. As a trauma nurse, she'd learned to trust my assessment of danger. Within 3 hours, she and Sophie were on a flight to California, while I positioned myself near Sophie's elementary school. At 10:15 the next morning, a black luxury SUV with heavily tinted windows circled the school parking lot twice before parking across the street. I watched through high-powered binoculars from my concealed position. The driver was a tall man in his late 30s wearing expensive clothes, with cold eyes that swept the playground methodically. Christopher Walsh himself, not delegating this surveillance to subordinates. Walsh sat in his vehicle for 25 minutes, clearly expecting to see Sophie during morning recess. When she didn't appear, he made an agitated phone call, his body language showing visible frustration. Perfect. The first phase of my counter-strategy was working exactly as planned. Derek called with more intelligence. I've been deep diving Walsh's activities for the past 3 years. This guy's been obsessed with you since Michael's passing. He hired multiple private investigation firms, hacked your business communications, bribed staff members at Sophie's school to report her daily schedule, and spent over $500,000 building a comprehensive profile of your family's patterns and vulnerabilities. What else? I kept my eyes locked on Walsh's vehicle. He's assembled a team, 4 other individuals, all with criminal backgrounds and special operations experience. Looks like he's paying them substantial money to help execute whatever he's planning. I'm sending you everything I have on these associates right now. After Walsh left the school, I began implementing Phase 2. Christopher Walsh wanted psychological warfare. I would show him what real psychological pressure looked like. My first objective was a commercial storage facility across town where Walsh's primary associate, Richard Brennan, kept a modified surveillance van. Derek hacked the facility's security system, giving me 22 minutes of undetected access. Inside Brennan's van, I found sophisticated electronic surveillance equipment, hundreds of photographs of my family taken without our knowledge, and detailed schedules of our daily routines. I carefully documented everything, then removed one critical component from each piece of equipment and left a note where Brennan would find it. You've been watching the wrong family. Now we're watching you. The second associate, Marcus Liu, operated a security consulting firm that was clearly a front for illegal activities. I waited until Liu left his office, then gained entry using techniques learned during years of overseas operations. Liu's files revealed the complete scope of Walsh's plan. The psychological maltreatment was only Phase 1. Phase 2 involved kidnapping Sophie to force me into a final confrontation, where Walsh planned to eliminate me while making Sophie watch, as his version of justice for Michael's end. I photographed every document, then planted listening devices throughout the office that would transmit everything back to Derek's monitoring systems. The third associate was the most dangerous. Colonel Martinez's databases identified him as Vincent Kane, a former military contractor discharged for excessive violence and disregard for rules of engagement. Kane was clearly Walsh's primary muscle, the one who would handle the actual kidnapping and violence. I found Kane at a gym that catered to mercenaries and private security contractors. Kane was exactly what I expected. Big, brutal, and overconfident. The kind of man who'd never faced anyone with my level of training and operational experience. As Kane finished his workout, I approached him casually in the parking lot. Vincent Kane, can I have a moment of your time? Kane turned immediately suspicious, his body language shifting to defensive. Who's asking? Someone who knows you're working for Christopher Walsh. Someone who wants to make you a significantly better offer than whatever he's paying you. The conversation was brief but productive. I learned that Walsh was planning to execute his kidnapping operation within 48 hours. More importantly, I learned that Kane wasn't nearly as loyal to his employer as Walsh believed. For the right price and the right guarantees, Kane was willing to consider alternative arrangements. By evening, I had complete intelligence on Walsh's entire operation. I'd compromised his surveillance network, potentially turned his primary enforcer, and documented his criminal conspiracy in exhaustive detail. But my plan was just beginning. Christopher Walsh thought he was hunting my family. He was about to learn that he'd made himself the prey, and I was a far more effective hunter than he could possibly imagine. My phone rang. Walsh's voice, no longer smooth and confident. Your family isn't where you hid them, Cooper. But I have resources you can't comprehend. I will find them eventually. I'm sure you will, I replied calmly. In fact, I'm going to make it easy for you. Sophie and my wife are at the Waterfront Hotel downtown, room 814. They arrived this morning. Seemed like the safest option. Lots of witnesses, professional security, public space. Long pause. You're lying to me. Check for yourself. I'll be there at 8 tonight. Come alone, and we can settle this like adults. Bring your team and things get much more complicated for everyone. I hung up, then immediately called Angela in San Diego. How's Sophie holding up? She keeps asking about you constantly, but she's safe here. Rebecca's kids are keeping her distracted. How much longer? One more day, I promised. After tonight, this situation is permanently resolved. The Waterfront Hotel wasn't a random choice. I'd selected it specifically for its tactical advantages, multiple exits, security cameras I could access, and a layout I knew intimately from a previous client protection assignment. By evening, I was positioned and ready. I'd registered room 814 under a false identity, set up comprehensive surveillance equipment, and positioned backup resources throughout the hotel. Derek was monitoring all electronic communications, while Colonel Martinez had positioned 3 of his best former operators in the lobby and parking garage. Christopher Walsh arrived exactly at 8 o'clock, alone as I'd demanded, well-dressed, composed, carrying an expensive leather briefcase. But my thermal imaging detected the pistol concealed under his jacket and a knife in his boot. I met Walsh in the hotel restaurant, both of us maintaining the pretense of a civilized conversation while assessing each other like hunters. You eliminated my brother, Walsh said without any preamble. Your brother was eliminated by the criminals who kidnapped him, I replied calmly. I attempted to save him. The investigation cleared me completely. Your attempt wasn't adequate. Michael died because you prioritized your own team's safety over his rescue. I'd reviewed those after-action reports dozens of times, analyzed every decision, replayed every moment. The rescue operation had been executed flawlessly until the final seconds when the kidnappers panicked and executed Michael before we could reach him. Nothing could have prevented it. So your solution is terrorizing my 8-year-old daughter? My voice remained level, but Walsh could hear the danger underneath. Your solution was accepting money for a mission you failed to complete. Now you get to experience genuine loss. Walsh opened his briefcase, revealing photographs of Sophie taken over months. I know everything about your family, Cooper, where they go, what they do, who they trust. I can reach them anywhere, anytime I choose. I leaned forward slightly. No, Christopher, you couldn't. What? Those photographs are 3 weeks old. The surveillance equipment you've been using has been compromised for the past 4 days. Your associates have already been turned or neutralized. You're not the hunter in this situation. You never were. Walsh's composure finally cracked. You're bluffing. I slid my phone across the table, showing live video feeds from inside Walsh's mansion, his corporate office, and his vehicles. Your security system has been broadcasting to me for the past 36 hours. Your phone calls, your plans, your associates' locations. I know everything about your operation. Walsh stared at the phone, his face draining of color as he realized the extent to which his entire plan had been compromised. Here's what happens next, I continued quietly. You disappear. Leave Washington, leave the country. I genuinely don't care which. But you never contact my family again. Because if you do, I will finish what we started tonight and you won't survive the consequences. Walsh's hand moved toward his jacket, but froze when he felt the barrel of my concealed pistol against his ribs under the table. That would be profoundly unwise, I said softly. The trap had sprung perfectly. Christopher Walsh was completely outmaneuvered, his operation destroyed, his associates compromised. But I knew running him off wasn't sufficient. Over the next 72 hours, Christopher Walsh's world collapsed with military precision. Derek traced his financial accounts through shell companies and offshore investments, revealing connections to arms dealers and human traffickers. That information found its way to FBI financial crimes investigators. Brennan was arrested attempting to sell stolen military equipment. Leo's firm was raided after anonymous tips revealed corporate espionage and blackmail schemes. Kane simply vanished after accepting my offer of witness protection and new identity. But the most devastating revelation came from my own investigation. I'd spent considerable time re-examining the original kidnapping of Michael Walsh, reviewing case files and witness statements. Something had always bothered me about the official narrative. Michael Walsh hadn't been randomly kidnapped. He'd been specifically targeted because of his brother's business dealings. Christopher Walsh's company had been selling restricted surveillance technology to criminal organizations, and Michael had discovered the illegal sales. The kidnapping was meant to permanently silence Michael. Christopher hadn't hired me to save his brother. He'd hired me to provide cover for Michael's homicide. I presented this evidence to Detective Sanchez. Financial records, communications between Christopher and the kidnappers, testimony from Kane detailing Christopher's actual role. The evidence was overwhelming. This is sufficient to charge him with conspiracy to commit homicide and multiple federal crimes, Detective Sanchez said. He didn't just fail to save his brother, he arranged his passing. Federal agents arrested Walsh at Seattle Airport, attempting to flee the country. But my most elegant move was psychological. During Walsh's arraignment, I ensured that details of Michael's actual end were leaked to media outlets. The public learned that Christopher Walsh hadn't been a grieving brother seeking justice. He'd been a homicider covering his tracks. Walsh was convicted on all charges and sentenced to life without possibility of parole. But 3 weeks after his arrest, I realized something was still wrong. Small things. A vehicle that seemed to follow Angela. Unidentified maintenance workers at Sophie's new school. Phone calls that disconnected immediately. Derek called with disturbing information. There's encrypted communications suggesting someone else was involved in the original plot. Someone's asking very specific questions about Walsh's arrest, trying to determine what evidence led to his conviction. Professional-level inquiries with serious technical capabilities. Detective Sanchez called with confirmation. Walsh was receiving substantial payments from another source, over $3 million in the past 2 years through shell companies. Someone else was funding his operation against your family. The answer came during Sophie's soccer game. A woman in the stands, who seemed out of place, watching me instead of the game, taking notes. I followed her to a luxury sedan, got her license plate. Derek traced it to Thornton Technologies' legal department. The woman was Elizabeth Harrington, executive vice president who'd been with Thornton for 18 years. The connection was devastating. Elizabeth had been secretly involved with Michael Walsh. When Michael discovered Christopher's illegal sales and planned to expose them, Elizabeth faced losing both the man she loved and her career. She'd been the actual architect of Michael's homicide, providing the legal and financial framework while Christopher arranged the kidnapping. When Christopher's revenge plan failed and got him arrested, Elizabeth decided to finish eliminating witnesses herself. She assembled a professional team of former intelligence operatives and military contractors. She wasn't planning psychological games. She wanted my entire family eliminated permanently, designed to look like a home invasion. But I'd anticipated exactly this scenario. I'd been documenting everything and storing evidence in multiple secure locations with automated dead man switch protocols. If anything happened to my family, evidence would automatically release to law enforcement, media, and the criminal organizations Christopher had betrayed. I secured Angela and Sophie at Colonel Martinez's facility, protected by former Special Forces operators. Elizabeth's team hit our house at 2:30 a.m. 5 professionals with night vision and military weapons. But I'd spent 4 days preparing the battlefield. First operative triggered motion-activated floodlights that destroyed his night vision advantage, fell into a concealed pit trap. Second operative entered through the unlocked front door, stepped on a pressure plate that triggered a flashbang grenade. Third, I eliminated with precision fire from a concealed position. Fourth, got trapped in my fortified study. The team leader tried retreating but found all exits blocked. I let the team leader go with a message for Elizabeth. I know everything about your role in Michael's homicide. I have complete evidence. Meet me tomorrow night at Thornton Technologies headquarters, top floor, midnight. Come alone. Let's finish this. Elizabeth arrived exactly at midnight. Through hacked security cameras, I watched her enter alone, armed. We met in the executive boardroom where Michael had once presented evidence of Christopher's crimes. You eliminated 4 of my team, she said coldly. Your team tried to eliminate my family. Let's discuss how you eliminated the man you claim to love. She didn't deny it. Michael was going to destroy everything. The company, thousands of jobs. He didn't understand business realities. So you arranged his kidnapping, manipulated his grieving brother into seeking revenge against me, the witness who might eventually uncover your crimes. Christopher was useful. Grief makes people easy to manipulate, and his obsession with you provided perfect cover for eliminating the one person who might eventually connect me to Michael's passing. She reached for her weapon. Mine was already drawn. You won't shoot an unarmed woman in cold blood, she said confidently. You're too honorable. You're correct, I agreed. Then I slid a pistol across the table. Pick it up. You want me dead? Here's your opportunity. We settle this now, and when I eliminate you, everyone knows it was justified self-defense against an armed threat. She was an excellent marksman, trained in military intelligence. She thought she had the advantage. She reached for the weapon with professional speed and precision. Fast. Very fast. The pistol cleared the table and rose toward me when she realized it was unloaded. My weapon fired once. Elizabeth collapsed. I called Detective Sanchez. It's finished. Elizabeth Harrington is dead. I have complete evidence of the entire conspiracy. The evidence painted the full picture. Elizabeth's relationship with Michael, her role in his homicide, manipulation of Christopher, attempts to eliminate my family. Even my dead man's switch evidence confirmed everything. Textbook self-defense, Sanchez concluded after investigation. Armed perpetrator with documented intent to eliminate your family. No prosecutor would file charges. 1 week later, I'm home watching Sophie play in our backyard while Angela reads nearby. The FBI raided Thornton Technologies. Elizabeth's computer contained evidence of arms sales and criminal conspiracies spanning years. The company collapsed, but more importantly, the threat to my family was permanently eliminated. Sophie climbed onto my lap. Daddy, are all the bad people gone now? I hugged her tightly. Yes, sweetheart. All the bad people are gone. You're completely safe. For the first time in months, I believed my family was truly secure. They'd made the fatal mistake of threatening the people I loved, and they learned why that guaranteed their complete destruction.